In the early 1990s, Steven Spielberg was the undisputed king of popcorn cinema. He was riding a wave of massive commercial success, gearing up to release his ultimate summer blockbuster, Jurassic Park. But while he was busy in the editing room making dinosaurs roar, he was harboring a vastly different project. It was a story he had quietly held the rights to for 10 years, unable to bring himself to make it. He was paralyzed by fear. Spielberg deeply doubted his own maturity as a filmmaker, feeling entirely unequipped to shoulder the historical weight of the Holocaust. He knew exactly how to build a wildly successful, crowd-pleasing entertainment machine, but applying that same glossy machinery to an atrocity of this magnitude felt wrong. He was terrified that turning the tragedy into a movie would inherently disrespect the victims. This reluctance pushed him to actively try and give the film away. He went down a list of elite filmmakers, hoping someone else would take the burden off his shoulders. He first approached Roman Polanski, but Polanski had actually survived the Krakow ghetto as a child. His mother was murdered at Auschwitz. The trauma was simply too close, and he turned the project down. Spielberg then offered the film to industry veterans like Sidney Pollack, who passed, and Martin Scorsese, who actually accepted before eventually returning it, unsure if he was the right fit. These refusals from the world's most capable directors highlighted a recurring fear. Even for masters of the craft, the prospect of containing the Holocaust within the bounds of a scripted drama felt like an impossible, perhaps even improper undertaking. When Spielberg finally decided he had to direct it himself, he established a strict set of rules to solve his ethical dilemma. First, he refused to accept a single dollar of salary or profit for the film, explicitly labeling any financial gain as blood money. Next, he stripped away the commercial gloss entirely. He insisted the film be shot in stark black and white, a risky decision that faced intense pushback from the studio. But Spielberg stood firm, explaining that for him, the symbol of life is color. Therefore, a film about the Holocaust had to represent life without light. This diagram illustrates his next step, ditching the perfectly smooth glide of Steadicams in favor of erratic handheld cameras. Cinematographer Janusz Kaminski shot 40% of the movie this way, discarding storyboards to create a raw, spontaneous, documentary-like reality. To honor the history, Spielberg actively dismantled his own polished filmmaking style. He engineered every choice to ensure the final product would never feel like consumable entertainment. There is, of course, one major exception to the black and white cinematography: a little girl walking through the chaos in a bright red coat. Spielberg used the red coat as a specific indictment. It was a visual signal that while the annihilation of European Jewry was as obvious as a child in a red coat, the Allied governments failed to bomb the German rail lines to stop it. Recreating this history took a severe toll on everyone involved. The production spent months on location in Poland, with several scenes filming right outside those very gates of Auschwitz. The proximity to the actual camps led to intense emotional breakdowns among the cast and crew. Spielberg himself was so devastated by the daily reality of the shoot that he relied on nightly phone calls from Robin Williams just to lift his spirits enough to keep going. Executing this unvarnished vision meant the filmmakers couldn't just clock in and out. They had to deeply immerse themselves in the psychological trauma of the history they were trying to honor. When Schindler's List released in 1993, it shattered box office expectations for a 3-hour black and white historical drama and swept the Academy Awards with 7 wins. Spielberg channeled that immense commercial success directly into the survivors of the Shoah Foundation. He used his profits to permanently record and preserve the testimonies of tens of thousands of Holocaust survivors. But despite widespread public acclaim, the film met fierce pushback from a faction of elite filmmakers who felt an ethical line had been crossed. Claude Lanzmann, the director of the 9-hour Holocaust documentary Shoah, publicly attacked the dramatization. He called it a deformation of historical truth, arguing that using fiction to depict the Holocaust is a direct transgression against the victims. This created a lasting friction. The film succeeded brilliantly with global audiences, yet it ignited a permanent artistic debate over the ethics of turning historical mass murder into a narrative film. The sharpest of these critiques came from Stanley Kubrick. He pointed out a harsh narrative reality. The true story of the Holocaust is about 6 million people who were killed. Schindler's List, he argued, is ultimately a story about 600 people who survived. These critiques carry weight. A structured movie, inherently designed to follow a protagonist toward a resolution, can never entirely capture the true, sprawling horror of the Holocaust. Despite the valid debate over its narrative flaws, the film forced a global audience to look at the human faces behind the statistics. It turned a historical tragedy into a personal obligation for millions, ensuring that the stories of the survivors would be documented long after the movie credits rolled.